So I think Tennessee's wide receivers are going to be one of the best parts about the team in 2024. But one national college football writer doesn't believe Tennessee has a top 10 wide receiver room in the country. I'll give you my thoughts on that and tell you why I think that's wrong. That and a whole lot more. It's coming up here on your Thursday, Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, good Thursday morning, everybody. Welcome into Locked On Vols. I am your host, Eric Kane. Appreciate you for being here as always and making Locked On Vols your first listen each and every single day. We're a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and I can't thank you enough for being here. Today, we got a fun show coming up, and we're going to discuss college football wide receiver groups. Some of the best wide receiver groups in the nation and where Tennessee stacks up in that regard in a matter of seconds. Of all assistant coaches' rankings, there was an article over there at Saturday Down South that talked about some assistant coaches who were going to be head coaches one day, and Tim Banks' name was mentioned in there. So I thought, hey, why don't we kind of rank Tennessee's assistant coaches for the 2024 staff? That's coming up in segment number 2. And then a couple of news and notes for baseball as we look towards the postseason now. Midweek earlier this week got a little dicey there for a moment, but where is Tennessee projected in the field of 64? That is coming up next for the number 1 Volunteers in segment number 3. So, Tennessee wide receivers. I got tagged in something on the message board over there at VolQuest.com from an everydayer. Screen name is Pine over there at VolQuest.com, and I appreciate him for always listening and creating discussion on the board. But Jesse Simonton, formerly of VolQuest, actually, back when we were rivals, he does national college football writing over there for On3. He does a really, really nice job. But he does this series every single year where he looks at the units. He does unit rankings. So he looks at the 10 best quarterback rooms in the country, running back rooms, wide receivers, tight ends, offensive line, defensive line, so on and so forth. And it's not just who has the best quarterback or who has the best wide receiver. It's groups. So for wide receivers, which is kind of what we're talking about here right now, it's interesting because it's top to bottom. Quarterbacks, only one plays. You know, if everybody stays healthy, only one plays, but you're still taking the room into consideration. And that's why last year with Joe Milton and Nico Imaliava, Tennessee had one of the better quarterback rooms in the country. Yet this year, they're not inside the top 10 per Jesse Simonton's unit rankings for quarterbacks. Why? Well, because you have a first-year starter in Nico, and there's a whole lot of hype there. I'm not trying to take anything away from it. But you got a guy who started one game, and then his backup is either a fifth-year walk-on quarterback in Gaston Moore or a true freshman in Jake Merklinger who's never played. So, again, you're looking at the unit grades, the unit rooms for each position across the country. Now, when you look at wide receiver, here's a little interesting. Jesse Simonton put it out there, and he even puts the caveat when he tweets out his article like, yo, Tennessee fans, before you get angry, it's tough sledding, essentially. Why? Well, he leaves Tennessee out of the top 10. Number 1, you've got Ohio State. Number 2, Oregon. Number 3, Texas. Number 4, Ole Miss. Number 5 is Missouri. Number 6 is Georgia. Number 7 is Miami. Number 8 is LSU. Number 9 is Oklahoma. And number 10 is Colorado. A lot of people saw Colorado in there and said, oh, that's just clickbait. Oh, that's just clickbait. Well, listen, the way clickbait works is if you put something about Colorado or Dion or Shadir in the headline, and the picture was something of Colorado. The thumbnail was not of Colorado, okay? And Colorado was the 10th team in this 10-team ranking. So I disagree with him putting Colorado in there, but I don't characterize this as clickbait. Someone who's in the content creating business, I know what clickbait is. This isn't it. But honestly, when you look at the top 10 or his top 10, I don't really have an issue with a lot of these, to be completely honest with you. I've got an issue with 2, and this is why I think Tennessee should slide in here and be a part of this top 10 list. Because Jesse puts best of the rest. Tennessee is the first team he lists, and then USC, Texas Tech, Auburn, North Carolina State, and so on and so forth. I have no issue with Ohio State being number 1. Even though you lost so much and Marvin Harrison Jr. and Julian Fleming transferred away to another Big Ten school. I have no issue because of what they have back in that program, what they're bringing in. Oregon, I have no issue. Texas makes a whole lot of sense, even though you lost 3 really, really productive receivers last year. Ole Miss, I don't have an issue with being top 5 because you're adding Juice Wells and one of the top JUCO wide receivers in Deion Smith, but you're also bringing back Trey Harris, Jordan Watkins, Aiden Williams, so on and so forth. Missouri, I have no issue with because you have the top in town of Luther Burden, but Theo Weiss Jr. is a really good player. Mookie Cooper, when healthy, really good player. Marquise Johnson as well, really good player. Georgia, even though you're losing, again, one of the better wide receivers and more underrated receivers to the NFL draft just a few, months ago, you're still bringing back Dominic Lovett, Anthony Evans, Ra Thomas, who weren't super productive, but were good and have experience in this league. Arian Smith, Landon Humphreys you're bringing back. Dylan Bell, who just drilled Tennessee in that matchup. Colby Young. It's a very well-rounded wide receiver room for Georgia. Miami makes some sense, and you adding Cam Ward to the mix going to make it even better. Oklahoma, to an extent, makes sense because you're bringing back 3 of the 4 guys who played last year. But the 2 teams I don't agree with and why I think Tennessee should be considered among the top 10 teams in the country in terms of wide receivers. I don't agree with LSU being here at number 8, and I don't agree with Colorado here being at number 10. LSU, this is what Jesse Simonson writes, garner a pair of top 20 NFL draft selections in Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr., who combined for over 31 touchdowns. Yet LSU's receiver rooms remains a scary bunch. Kieran Lacey is ready for his moment in the sun. The Tigers brought in C.J. Daniels from Liberty, perhaps the top group of 5 receiver, to make a jump to the Power Conference this offseason. Chris Brazzell is going to Tennessee. Let's remind everybody there. LSU's receiver room also features Chris Hilton, Aaron Anderson, formerly of Alabama, Shelton Sampson Jr., Xavier Thomas. I don't care who you're bringing in. You're losing a ton of production. You're also losing your Heisman Trophy-winning quarterback. There's no reason, in my opinion, LSU should be ranked inside the top 10 when matching it up with a team like Tennessee. Let's go to Colorado. The Buffs have major concerns up and down the roster. This is what Jesse Simonton says about Colorado's wide receivers, but the receiver room isn't among them. Shadir Sanders has plenty of quality targets to throw to. Two-way star Travis Hunter's the number 1 option in the slot or out wide. Agree with that. While Jimmy Horn Jr. and Amarian Miller are back too. Horn Jr. was Sanders' safety net valve in 2023. And averaging just over 9.8 yards per catch, ranking number 2 on the team. Deion Sanders hits the portal, far more for playmaking help too, bringing in Will Shepard from Vanderbilt. We know that name. Wester from FAU, highly projected, yada, yada, yada. Listen, Shadir Sanders, good quarterback. Travis Hunter, great player. Will Shepard's got SEC experience. Okay, Jimmy Horn, decent. But there's not a whole lot of depth to that Colorado wide receiver room. Got a lot of talent in Travis Hunter, for sure, but not a whole lot of depth in there. So when comparing it to a team like Tennessee, I think Colorado should be dropped. You look at Tennessee's room, and I understand people having some reservations about Tennessee because the group took a step back last year, and I understand a lot of that has to do with quarterback too, but the group took a step back last year, but everybody knows who Squirrel White is now. Okay, he's an established playmaker in this league. Everybody knows who Bru McCoy is. Coming off injury, sure, but everybody knows who Bru McCoy is. Everybody knows who Dante Thornton is, but only we know how good of a spring that he's had and how he's projected to be a breakout player this year. Everybody else across the SEC and across the country just think he was a big bust. And, I mean, hey, it's hard to blame them for that because there was so much hype last year and it didn't transpire. It didn't translate for Tennessee until they bumped him outside, and, of course, he got hurt. But we know, following Tennessee as closely as we do, that Dante Thornton's set to have a really, really strong season, in my opinion. Chris Brazzell, they want to talk. LSU wants to talk about getting C.J. Daniels from Liberty. Tennessee got Chris Brazzell from Tulane. Very much in that conversation with C.J. Daniels being one of the best of group of 5 wide receivers. You had in Mike Matthews, a 5-star wide receiver who just went off this spring. You have true depth at the slot now with obviously with Braylon Staley. There we go. You can tell I've had a few days off. Braylon Staley. You bring back other guys who have experience, such as Chaz Nimrod and Caleb Webb. This group is super, super deep. So there's no reason why it shouldn't be in the top 10. I'm not even saying it should be number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It should just be in the top 10 in place of teams like LSU, in place of groups like Colorado, in my opinion. That's where I differ. I don't think it's clickbait or anything, and certainly I think that, again, I have no issues with a lot of these teams on the list. Texas, Oklahoma, Ohio State, Oregon, Missouri, even Georgia for sure, Miami. But I disagree that LSU and Colorado should be on this list, and in place of one of those two teams should be Tennessee for sure. So if I was making this list, I would take a lot of what Jesse believes and Jesse wrote, but I would exclude LSU and Colorado, put in a team like Tennessee for sure, and then maybe look to broaden the horizons a little bit to round out that top 10. As he's going through this series, Tennessee was not included in the best units for quarterback, which is understandable, as I mentioned earlier. Running back, which honestly is very understandable because, again, you lose so much proven depth and experience outside of Dylan Sampson, so I get that. Tight end, it's brand new. We can be excited about it. We can be jacked up and be pumped up about it, but Ethan Davis hadn't played, and Holden Stays is brand new to the system. So I understand Tennessee not being in that group. I don't understand Tennessee not being in the wide receivers, and when Jesse does his offensive line unit grades or unit rankings, Tennessee's offensive line better be in there because it's been a back-to-back season of the Joe Moore Award semifinalist, and sure, you lost Gerald Mincy from that group, and you lost Ollie Lane, but you bring back Spraggins, Cooper Mays, John Campbell, and you add arguably one of the better offensive tackles in the transfer portal cycle this offseason. So Tennessee better be in that one for sure, and of course, we will track that. Hey, when we come back, let's rank, speaking of rankings, list season, all that and more, let's rank Tennessee's assistant football coaches and who has a shot at being a head coach here in the near future. That is coming up next as we continue on here with this Thursday edition of Locked On Vols. Stay tuned. You don't want to miss what's coming up next. Wouldn't it be great if you could see all your investment and retirement accounts all in one place? With Yahoo Finance, you can consolidate your views from multiple accounts into one hub and access the expert analysis you need to tend to your entire portfolio with a whole lot of confidence. Let's get straight to the point. You want to grow your portfolio and deal with the rising cost of inflation, to pay off debt and your mortgage, pretty much anything standing in your way of having some financial freedom, right? With Yahoo Finance, you can get access to the news, data, tools, all that you need in order to help reach that financial freedom. Because when it comes to your financial future, you think you've done it all. You've saved money, you've researched, you've invested when you could, but now you need to take those investments to the next level and use what every financial grade is using, and that is Yahoo Finance. For more than 25 years, Yahoo Finance has been the brand behind every great investor. Whether you're a seasoned investor or looking for that extra guidance, Yahoo Finance gives you all the tools and data that you need all in one place. So for a comprehensive financial news and analysis, visit the brand behind every great investor. Go to yahoofinance.com. That's #1 financial destination. yahoofinance.com. That is yahoofinance.com. More of Locked On Vols here on a Thursday coming up next. All right, so I was looking over a Saturday Down South, and there was a story on Wednesday morning when I was over at the airport trying to do a little show prep. There was a story over there on the website, and it was titled SEC Assistants Who Could Be FBS Head Coaches at This Time Next Year. And the thumbnail, the picture was, this is a definition of clickbait for a Tennessee reporter or a Tennessee fan, because Tim Banks, was the thumbnail, right? And again, it's not necessarily clickbait because there's a very real chance that Tennessee's defensive coordinator could be a head coach somewhere this time next year, but it got me to click on it, and that's what is bringing this article to the show here. So Tim Banks was the thumbnail. So obviously they're going to talk about Tim Banks in here. #1 on the list of SEC assistants who could be head coaches this time next year is Glenn Schumann, defensive coordinator from Georgia. #2 is Kirby Moore, the offensive coordinator at Missouri. #3 is Blake Baker, the defensive coordinator at LSU. And he's done a really, really good job. He was at Missouri before going to LSU, but Yeah, that defense was not too great last year, and it kind of squandered a Heisman Trophy winning campaign from Jaden Daniels. But nonetheless, number four on this list is Tim Banks. And here's what the article says about Tennessee's Tim Banks. Quote, hand up. I was dead wrong about Banks. After several candidates turned down Josh Heupel, I wasn't crazy about the idea of Heupel hiring Banks as his DC because I didn't feel like the lack of reps with total autonomy on defense at Illinois and Penn State. The knock on Heupel was he wasn't concerned about playing complementary football, and he put his defenses in tough spots. Banks proved he was up for the task, and most recently with Tennessee's defense ranked number 1 in the SEC in yards allowed per rush, number 1 in the SEC in tackles for loss, number 2 in the SEC in yards per play, and they're also top 10 nationally in sacks as well. I don't know why they didn't include that in this list. Banks has ties in the Midwest and in the state of Tennessee. He could be a candidate to return to his home state of Michigan if Jim McElwain endures a third consecutive disappointing season at Central Michigan. And who knows, maybe if Clark Lee puts up another goose egg in SEC play, Vanderbilt could come calling for someone who knows the Volunteer State well, having spent time at Memphis and Tennessee. I've never really thought about Vanderbilt as a potential landing spot, but again, it would make a whole lot of sense for a guy like Tim Banks because he spent time at Memphis. He's, of course, been here at Tennessee, and that would be kind of a, maybe not Vanderbilt specifically because Vanderbilt's such a tough job, but like, My question for defensive coordinators, especially guys who aren't super young like Tim Banks, I mean, he's not old by any stretch of the imagination, but like, you got a really good gig here at Tennessee. You're making good money, and sure, you want to be a head coach and continue to climb the ranks, but like, would you want to take a job at Central Michigan? Really? I mean, how much backing are you going to get there? Same with Vanderbilt. I mean, Vanderbilt would be more enticing because, of course, it's Power 5 and it's in the SEC. But if you walk into a position like Clark Lee's in and Vanderbilt, man, it's almost like you're set up for failure. I mean, it really, really is. So guys like Tim Banks and even guys like Josh Elander with Tennessee baseball, the associate head coach, they can afford to be super, super selective. Tim Banks was rumored and reported on, some places even in this market that he was the favorite and potentially was going to go and be the next head coach at MTSU. Didn't turn out to be the case. Of course, went with, former SEC head coach at Vanderbilt as well, and who I thought was one of the best analysts on the SEC network for the last couple of football seasons. But Tim Banks certainly going to be a head coach here soon. It's just you can sit back and be selective, and you can be picky if you want. And that's kind of what Tim Banks and even Josh Elander are doing with baseball. But we'll see if Tennessee baseball can survive this offseason with Josh Elander still in the same position. We'll have to see because he will be sought after, that is for sure. Little disclaimer here. This is I'm implementing this little section into the podcast because I had already recorded and edited and had this thing all looking pretty. And I realized that in this segment that we're about to go over, discussing Tennessee's assistant football coaches and kind of ranking them accordingly, I left out one key coach, a freaking coordinator. Blame it on the lack of sleep and the long travel day on a Wednesday, I guess. But whatever the case is, I didn't want to re-record the whole show and all that. So I wanted to just at least get this in there. And apologies to Joey Halzle, quarterback's coach and Tennessee's offensive coordinator. I don't know why I left him out. I think maybe because when I think about quarterbacks, I think about the offense, I just automatically assume Josh Heupel. But Joey Halzle's been with him his entire time here at Tennessee. He played for him at Oklahoma. He's been with him the majority of his coaching career at every single stop. So very much of an oversight. But again, I was blowing through this, and I guess we can blame the stupidity on a long travel day. So you're about to hear my rankings, and I go through 9 down to 1 Tennessee's assistant coaches, and I completely omit Joey Halzle. So before you get in there and listen to that, just know that if I could go back and if I had the time to re-record the entire show and that segment specifically, I would have Joey Halzle sitting at number 5, or I guess, number 5, right in front of William Inge. And right in front of a couple of guys who are very important to the staff here at Tennessee, and who I would probably still want to rank them in front of Joey Halzle, knowing that Halzle is the offensive coordinator, but also knowing that's a growing role for him. really good quarterback instructor. Was instrumental in getting Nico Iamaleava to commit to Tennessee, instrumental in Hendon Hooker's growth along with Josh Heupel. And Heupel, a lot of the times he just lets him go and practice an individual and all that. And, of course, Heupel has a hand in quarterback development. But Joey Halsey's done a really, really good job in terms of quarterback so far, specifically with Hendon Hooker and the progression early on here with Nico and getting Joe Milton ready to play. Because when he set foot here on campus the first game or two of 2021, it was evident that he still had a long way to go. So I'm an idiot, complete oversight, but wanted to kind of slip this in here and let you guys know that I would have Joey Halsey at number 5. So without further ado, let's move on back to the episode, and you'll hear me rank Tennessee's assistant coaches, where I completely omit Tennessee's offensive coordinator, Joey Halsey. So this article got me thinking about if I were to rank Tennessee's assistant football coaches. Would love to get your input on this. And these are my rankings, okay? Certainly there can be up for discussion. Certainly there's some questionable positions here, but this is kind of where I have them. Let's go in reverse order here. Number 9 is Alec Ablin. Not that he's a bad coach, but he's literally just brand new. Did it for the first time ever last year, and took some lumps in recruiting, but I think he's done really, really well in terms of being in the conversation. Of course, getting an early commit for the class of 2025, and that's Alec Ablin. So Alec Ablin coming in last just because really he's super young. Number 8, I will go Darrell Sims. Again, I think he's going to be a stud. I think he's going to be a star, but he's never coached at this level, and so it'd be silly of me to put him way up these rankings, these silly offseason rankings that don't mean anything. But it'd be silly for me to put him up towards the top when he's never done it at this level. But I'm intrigued to see what he's going to look like because his reputation, precedes him. He is a relationship guy. He is a passionate, a fiery guy, and I think he's going to do super, super well here. But for now, he comes in at number 8. Number 7 is Mike Eckler. I think Mike Eckler does a really good job with the special teams plan. I think that he's very aggressive. I think that he sees the strengths and knows how to exploit them. I think that it's the Rodney Gardner show on the defensive line, defensive linemen, defensive ends, and Leos. Mike Eckler's there, and Mike Eckler's there to contribute and help and collaborate. But really, when I think of Eckler, I think of special teams because it is the Rodney Gardner show up front. But Eckler's a seasoned veteran in this league and in college, Power 5. He does a pretty good job for Tennessee. Number 6 is Willie Martinez. Fans don't like him at all, but you can't replace experience. And plus, he's been a defense coordinator in this league. And Tennessee's corners and Tennessee's secondary overall has grown and grown and grown and taken steps and steps and steps, really, each of the past couple of seasons. Fans just don't want to, recognize that because they see the same players back there and get frustrated. But I'm not saying Willie Martinez has done an excellent job, but he's also gotten some pretty solid guys in terms of rankings and guys who are high on their priority list from the transfer portal. Tennessee wanted Jordan Matthews very badly, got him. Tennessee wanted Ricky Gibson very badly, got him. Tennessee wanted Jermon McCoy very badly, got him. Tennessee wanted Caleb Beasley very badly, got him. Top to bottom, I'll have Willie Martinez there at number 6. Number 5, I will have William Minge. And again, like Darrell Sims, he hasn't coached here at Tennessee, but he has coached at this level, Power 5. William Minge has not been in the SEC, and I'm intrigued to see what he looks like and how he is on the recruiting trail. So maybe it's prematurely having him up here at number 5, but I think he's going to be really, really good simply because he is just like Sims, he is a relationship guy. He's been at it for a long time as well. He knows how to coach, and he's experienced, just not here in Knoxville or really in the SEC landscape. But because he's a relationship guy and because he has defensive coordinator experience, maybe if Tim Banks leaves, he could step in and be the next DC potentially. I don't know. But a lot of it is on experience, and that's why I have William Minge there at number 5. Number 4, I got Kelsey Pope, man. He's wide receivers took a step back last year for sure, but a lot of that had to do with quarterback play. Jalen Hyatt was not who he was in 2021. Not the same guy in 2021 that he was in 2022, obviously. Kelsey Pope was a huge reason for that. Huge reason for that. And also, you had 2 third-rounders a couple years ago, and then Hyatt and Cedric Tillman, and you had the production of Ramel Keaton back there in 2022 as well. Squirrel White this past year, and he's won some big boy battles on the recruiting trail. Mike Matthews and Braylon Staley holding off home state South Carolina that came, hot trying to get him, and some of these in-state guys here in this class of 2025, Kelsey Pope has done a really nice job recruiting the last little bit. And I think so far, I think that the Tennessee wide receiver, even when he wasn't an on-the-field coach, he was very much active behind the scenes. I think Tennessee's wide receivers, since Josh Heupel's been here, have done a really, really good job. Glenn Ellerby's there, number 3. Sure, recruiting shortcomings have been very apparent at times. 100%. As of the recording of this podcast, Tennessee has still not started a guy on the offensive line that Glenn Ellerby and Josh Heupel have recruited. It's been all transfer portal holdovers. That's got to change. What he has done, and Kelsey Pope too this cycle, what they have done is cast a wider net. So Tennessee is very much in on several elite offensive lineman prospects. And sure, one will get Chris Brazzell to Georgia, or say, one is talking with this team or whatever, and that's fine. That doesn't mean Tennessee's out of it, but Tennessee also has 4 or 5 quote-unquote backups because they're so involved in so many different prospects. That has not been the case in recruiting for Glenn Ellerby the last couple of cycles, so credit him right now. Got to finish. He's got to finish. Credit him this cycle so far for casting a wider net. And, of course, the offensive line production in 3 seasons, it's been phenomenal. And development, darnell right, been phenomenal. Glenn Ellerby there's number 3. Number 2 is Tim Banks. And maybe I'm putting the fact that he's a defensive coordinator in here as well because I think he calls a good game. I do. And I think that he takes risk when necessary, but he's not over the top. But also, he's got 2 safeties that a lot of fans have not always been super thrilled about the last couple of years, but they know exactly where to be, and they're leaders on this defense, and you know exactly what you're getting with them. And I would much rather have consistency than unpredictability, for sure. And it's kind of a changing of the guard this offseason. I'm intrigued to see kind of what these new Tennessee safeties are going to be, but Tim Banks, more so for his play calling, is why I have him up there at number 2. And then number 1 is Rodney Gardner. I mean, you can't really discredit him with all the talent that he's put into the NFL draft, what he's done with this defensive line right here at Tennessee. I'm not going to spend enough time on this, but obviously Rodney Gardner is Tennessee's best assistant coach, in my opinion. What say you? Would love to hear how you would rank Tennessee's assistant coaches. Again, here are my 9 down to 1 on the field coaches. Number 9, Alec Ablin. Number 8, Darrell Sims. Number 7, Mike Eckler. Number 6, Willie Martinez. Number 5, William Minge. Number 4, Kelsey Pope. 3 is Glenn Ellerby. 2 is Tim Banks. Number 1 is Rodney Gardner. Okay, when we come back, we'll talk a little news and notes from Tennessee baseball. Number 1, Tennessee, the baseball team. A big series at Vanderbilt this weekend. We'll get you set with a couple of news and notes coming up next here on a Thursday, Locked On Vols. It is winner take all time in the NBA, in the NHL, those playoffs, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a win of your own. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That is $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and so much more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to make every playoff shot count. That is FanDuel.com/LockedOn. FanDuel.com/LockedOn to make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, it is America's #1 sports book. All right, we got a couple minutes left here on this Thursday edition of the show, so it's not going to be a very big segment, but did want to touch base a little bit about baseball. Joey tweeted at me late on a Tuesday and said, hey, man, quick explanation on what midweek games are all about. For those of us that haven't really followed baseball, do they just rest all the good guys and play all the young guys with smaller schools bringing their A game? Would love to know kind of the strategy behind midweek games. Yeah, Joey, for the most part, I mean, Tennessee plays its starters usually. Now, they will rest, somebody like for instance, Cal Start, the catcher. He catches every single SEC game. So, they had Cannon Peebles working at DH, and they had Charlie Taylor behind the plate on Tuesday. So, those are 2 guys that normally aren't in the everyday lineup. There's been times where Kavaris Tears gets the midweek off, or Blake Burke gets the midweek off, or so-and-so. But for the most part, Tennessee plays its order. It's starting 9 typically. Now, the pitching is completely different. Midweek games, in so many ways, I say it's not really baseball because it is a bullpen game. Tennessee goes in with a plan and a list saying, hey, I need to get this guy 45 pitches, need to get this guy 30 pitches. If we work into this, I would love to get this guy to get at least 10 pitches. That's just kind of how it is. Dylan Lloyd goes in there and starts, not this past Tuesday, but he's typically been Tennessee's midweek starter, but he won't work past 45 pitches. Marcus Phillips, came in and started on Tuesday and ran into some issues for sure. He started a couple of games. Brady Robinson's pitched a lot in these midweek games. Andrew Binky's pitched a lot in these midweek games. JJ Garcia's pitched a lot in these midweek games. Some of these names from the weekends, but a lot of them you don't. And so it's a true bullpen game. So the loss to Lipscomb, sure, last week it stings a little bit. But if Tennessee was throwing A.J. Causey and Nate Snead and Drew Beam at him, on the weekend, it might be a different story. You know what I'm saying? So this past Tuesday, it was dicey there. Dylan Droughland had to get a 3-run home run to win it for Tennessee there late in the ball game to beat Queens, and Queens is not a good baseball team. So I guess my vote of confidence, or my advice would be, don't take midweeks to heart, okay? There's a lot of teams that play a lot of different caliber competition. Florida plays one of the toughest midweek schedules in the nation because there's so much talent, baseball talent in the state of Florida. And they lose a lot of midweek games. They do. I mean, Wake Forest has dropped midweek games this year. Texas A&M's dropped midweek. Vanderbilt's dropped midweek games. It just happens. It's not necessarily real baseball. It's a work session for sure, but because it's a bullpen game, I'm not going to sit here and say that it's real baseball. So that's kind of how I would describe it. Yeah, man, it was dicey the other night for sure. D1 Baseball, which is the publication that's I use their rankings when I write about Tennessee baseball, and that's actually reflective in the score bugs and the scoreboards on ESPN and the SEC Network broadcast and all that. D1 Baseball put out their latest rendering of the Field of 64, and Tennessee is the number 3 overall seed. So it is D1 Baseball said, I think on their podcast earlier this week, that Tennessee's pretty much a lock to be a top 8 seed, which means if you enter postseason play as a top 8 overall seed, that means you are hosting not only regionals, but you are hosting super regionals if you make it out of regional play, which is something that obviously you want to strive for. But Tennessee here is number 3 overall seed in the latest rendering of the Field of 64. Tennessee would be the number 1 seed in the Knoxville Regional, and it would host 2 seed UConn, 3 seed Virginia Tech, which Tennessee played 18 innings in an exhibition over there at Tuscaloosa College back in the fall. And so a little bit about Virginia Tech, just a smidge, and so on and so forth. And that's kind of what Tennessee's looking at right now. But keep in mind, too, that, Baseball America, D1 Baseball, perfect. I mean, they're all putting out these different projections several times a week. So your boy booked hotel room in 4 different places last year because Tennessee was for sure going to be on the road just playing somewhere in regional play, and I had to cancel 3 and ended up going to Clemson. But what we do know now, barring a collapse, with 6 SEC games remaining, 8 games overall remaining left on the schedule with 2 midweeks, Tennessee will be hosting a regional in Knoxville at Lindsey Nelson Stadium. And if you make it out of that, Tennessee's probably hosting a super regional. But the latest Field of 64 projections have Tennessee as the number 3 overall seed. We know Tennessee's number 1 in the nation across the polls. If you want to look at the Field of 64 projections and all that, they take into account RPI a lot. Tennessee doesn't have a bad RPI whatsoever, but Kentucky's got a strong one. A&M's got a strong one. Clemson's got a strong one. Arkansas's got a strong one. So does Tennessee, but not as strong as some of those other teams. Also, on the weekly, D1 Baseball puts out like their updated position power rankings. And I just clicked on them here for today just because I was, looking, trying to track and see kind of where Tennessee's guys are. Billy Amick is ranked at number 7 at third base, according to D1 Baseball. Christian Moore is ranked as the number 2 second baseman in the D1 power rankings. Blake Burke is ranked at number 3, I believe. See if it'll load. Blake Burke is ranked as the 3rd best first baseman in the power rankings. And that just kind of shows you why Tennessee is so very good and why Tennessee has won just a whole lot of games. So it should be a fun end of the regular season. Again, Tennessee is going to be at Vanderbilt this weekend. Tennessee will return home, finish off the regular season by hosting South Carolina. And then it'll go to Hoover for the SEC tournaments, and it will play on Wednesday because it'll be a top 4 seed regardless, and they'll be in the double elimination round. Hoover doesn't matter, but it's a good chance to get a lot of work in. And then you finish off at Hoover, and then you come back and you get set for postseason play. And the season really has kind of flown by, and we're already kind of here. But super, super exciting times. Number 1 ranked Tennessee should be a force in the postseason, and I can't wait to cover it. And we'll tell you all about it here on Locked On Vols. I know a lot of people don't care about baseball, but Tennessee baseball is good. Tennessee baseball is number 1 ranked team in the country. So if you're a Tennessee fan, you want to have pride about the Power T. I'd be kind of locked in about the Tennessee baseball team right now for sure. All right, that is going to do it for this edition of Locked On Vols, this Thursday edition. Had fun talking about college football wide receiver rooms, kind of where Tennessee ranks in that one, Tennessee assistant coaches, and a little bit of baseball news and notes here on this Thursday show. We'll come back. We'll finish the week out strong here on a Friday Locked On Vols. Couldn't do it without you guys. Appreciate you as always. We'll do it again tomorrow. This is Locked On Vols.